Hi everybody, it's Sarah here, and this is a video on teaching vocabulary. So if you are teaching vocabulary, if you're doing a session plan on teaching vocabulary, then this is the video for you to watch, okay? So as you can see on my screen, we've got the session aims. Now these are the aims that you can share with your teachers when you start your session, okay? You could write up these aims on the board and you can tell your teachers that today we are looking at why teaching vocabulary is so important. We're going to take part in maybe one vocabulary lesson as students, and we're going to look at the stages in a vocabulary lesson. Okay, so you can share those aims with your teachers when you start. Now, it's a good idea for us to ask our teachers some questions when we start. For example, you could ask them, is teaching vocabulary more important than teaching grammar? This one. And how do you teach vocabulary? It's really important that we start the session this way, because then we can get an idea of what the teachers believe and what the teachers currently do. And we can help them a little bit better this way. Give them plenty of time to work together in pairs or in small groups to discuss this. It's really important that we give them enough time. And of course, as the trainer, you should be monitoring them, listening carefully to what they say, because you might have to respond to something that they say when you're doing your session. All right. Now, after you've given them some questions to discuss together, you might decide to give them the numbers quiz, which I did with you when you were in the training session with me. Just remember that they are guessing how many words that children can learn and how many words they will know. The answers are here. But this is up to you. Okay, you don't have to do this, but you could share this information with them somehow. To get them to guess the numbers makes this a little bit more interactive, so you could do that, or you could just tell them. All right. Now, before we start any kind of demo with our teachers, we need to give them a task, all right? We must give them a task to do as teachers as they participate in the demo session. So one thing you could do is show them the session, the vocabulary lesson stages, all right? And get them to try and put these in order. So you can see on my screen, you've got the context lead in. Of course, we know that this is followed by language clarification. That's number 2. Number 3 is controlled practice. And number 4 is freer practice. Okay, so we could check to see if they know these stages first. And it's a good idea to get them to do this in pairs or again in small groups so that it's interactive, okay? Now, we should tell them that they are going to be students in a vocabulary lesson. We need to warn them, all right? We need to tell them what they need to think about as they participate in the vocabulary lesson. So for example, we could say, you're going to participate in the lesson as students, and you need to do the tasks below. You need to answer these questions. For each stage, what did you do? Or for language clarification, what did the teacher do? It's really important to get them to reflect on what the teacher did or what you did during the demo lesson, during language clarification, because this is where we convey and check meaning. It's where we elicit and check form, and it's where we focus on pronunciation by doing our modeling and drilling. Okay, so it's really important for the language clarification that your teachers reflect on what you did as a teacher during that stage. And for all the other stages, lead in, control practice, and freer practice, they need to reflect on what they did as students, because we need to remind them that these lessons should be interactive, communicative, and student-centered, right? So you should set up this task before you start the demo lesson. Double check that the teachers know what they need to think about as they do the demo lesson, and then ask them if they're ready to start, okay? And then we will start the demo lesson. For example, here are some sentences about your teacher. Do you think they are true or false? Now, we played this a couple of times on the course. You will share 3 statements with your teachers, and they should be all about where you live, all right? Because this vocabulary is connected to places that we live. They need to decide in pairs if they think it is true or false. Remember, 2 are true and 1 is false. And then they tell you what they think. Okay, so if you remember, for me, it was true, true, and false. All right, this is the lead in. Okay, now you're going to go to language clarification. And in this case, I said, here are things that we find in a city, town, or village. How many pictures can you see? And the students will say 10. There are 10 pictures. All right. Now here are the things that we find in a city, town, or village. You match them to the pictures. Let's do the first one together. Which one is picture A? What can you see in picture A? And you try to elicit park. Okay, that's in picture A. And students in pairs match the words to the pictures. And then you do feedback, right? So what's in picture B? It's a swimming pool, and so on. Now, for some of these, you might have to check a couple of things. For example, an apartment block. You might have to ask some CCQs to double check the word. For example, what do people do in an apartment block? And the answer is, they live there. Do many people live there or a few people? And the answer is, many people live there, right? Okay, so you might have to check some of these. Now, we need to tell the students what type of words these are. So we'll ask them, what type of words are these? And the students will say, nouns. All right. Then we're going to model and drill. And what we can do is ask them about the syllables. So we would say, listen everybody, restaurant, restaurant. Repeat, 3, 2, 1, and everybody repeats together as a class. And then do it again in small groups or do it with individuals. Then we're going to mark the stress, okay? So listen again, restaurant. How many syllables do you hear? Restaurant. There are 2. So which sound don't we say? And it's this one in the middle. Okay. Which syllable is strong? Restaurant. It's the first one, right? So the first one is strong. And we can do this with all of the words that we've got in front of us. We can elicit from our students what the word stress is. Okay? All right. Now we need to show them how to use this in a sentence. Okay? So I showed you some sentences. In my town, we've got restaurants. In my town, we've got a park. In my town, we haven't got any beaches. You can ask them some concept checking questions for this. Okay, so in my town, we've got restaurants. Can I go to restaurants in my town? Yes. How many restaurants are in my town? I don't know. Is there more than one restaurant? Yes. Okay, good. In my town, can I go to the park? Yes. How many parks do we have in my town? One. And how do we know? Because we've got a. Can I go to the beach in my town? No. There isn't a beach in my town. We haven't got any beaches. Then you can elicit the sentence structure. So it's we've got plus noun with an S at the end. Or we've got plus a or an plus noun when there's one of them. Or we haven't got plus any plus nouns with a plural, right? So you can elicit this from your students. You can model and drill. We've got restaurants, we've got a park, we haven't got any beaches, so you can show them where the sentence stress is. We've got restaurants, we've got a park, we haven't got any beaches. Okay? And now with a partner, they can work together and tell them 3 things that they have in their town and 1 thing that they haven't got. All right? And that's the control practice that students will do together. Equally, you could get them to write this. That's possible as well. Okay? And then we move on to the freer practice. And in this case, we tell our students that they've got lots of money from their teacher. They should be very excited. And they're going to spend their money on building a new town. So they have to prepare a poster where they draw what's in their town and then they present it to another group. Okay? And then, of course, you would give the teacher some feedback on this task. You might do feedback, you will do feedback on content. So I really liked your town, Musa, because it's got a cinema and a park. And you would do feedback on error correction. For example, we haven't got restaurant. You would change that to we haven't got any restaurants, okay? It's important that we add this stage so that your teachers can see how you deal with feedback with your students, all right? So this is really important. And then, of course, we get the teachers, not as students, but as teachers, to reflect on the lesson that they just saw. They need some time for this. Okay, they need some time to reflect on this in pairs. And of course, as they do this, you will be monitoring them, prompting them. And of course, you would give some plenary feedback at the end to everybody all together. So in the context lead-in, you guessed what was true or false about where I live. Okay, so the students get the idea of places where we live. In the language clarification, the teacher got the students to match the pictures to the words. Then the teacher asked them CCQs. What do people do in an apartment block? Do many people live there or few people? And then we elicited form. They're all nouns. And then we did some modeling and drilling and marked the word stress, okay? In the control practice, they will reflect on what the students did. So the students, of course, talk together about what they have in their town, maybe 3 things that they have and 1 thing that they don't have. And in freer practice, they designed a new town and presented it to each other, all right? Now, you don't need to stop there because this is a 90-minute session. So what you could help the teachers with, what you could remind them of, is what happens in the context. Okay, so why we do it, to establish and to get students motivated in the context of the lesson, and give them some teacher tips. All right? So just remember that teachers will really need this. They'll need a breakdown of the stage, and they'll need to know why we do it. This is the theory. The